As the FBI and the Justice Department have a document that puts then Vice President Biden at the center of a criminal scheme. The White House is dismissing the claims. They say the president's always been transparent. All right, Todd, put this in plain English. What's the latest charge?
The deposition of former President Trump. The video for the first time being made public tonight in the sexual assault and defamation case brought against him by E. Jean Carroll. The president's lawyer saying he will not testify in court, so the jurors saw this deposition instead. The former president seen on video responding to documents and questions posed by Carroll's lawyer. And after repeatedly saying E. Jean Carroll is not his type, the moment he was shown this photo of Carroll, she's on the left there from years ago, asked who it was, Trump in the deposition says it's Marla. Marla Maples is his second wife. ABC senior investigative reporter Aaron Petersky leading us off at the courthouse tonight.
This is the former president of the United States answering questions in a deposition about a rape he insists he never committed, saying of his accuser, E. Jean Carroll, she's not my type.
I take it, sir, that you stand by that statement today?
Yes, I do.
Donald Trump shown this photo the moment he met Carroll in the late 1980s.
You have in front of you a black and white photograph that we've marked as DJT-23.
When asked to identify the woman in the picture, Trump mistakes Carroll for his ex-wife, Marla Maples.
It's Marla.
You say Marla's in this photo?
That's Marla. Yeah, that's my wife.
And then next week, another potential campaign signal fire, a new memoir comes out, followed by...
The person you just pointed to was E. Jean Carroll.
Trump continues to insist he didn't rape Carroll because of the way she looks, even after he confused her for his ex-wife. So her lawyer following up with this question.
The only difference between me and other people is I'm honest.
Bribery. And that's what makes this so much more severe. Up until this point, our discussions have been, this is unethical, it's un-American, it's not good. And that should have been looked at and is being looked at. But when you have bribery, bribery is a crime. That moves this into the criminal element. Did Joe Biden help a foreign power for money? That is not in the job description of vice president, and that's what elevates this so high.
Silence from the White House. As Special Counsel John Durham's report reveals just how forcefully the left pushed the Trump-Russia narrative.
So does it surprise you that
Mr. Durham, the special counsel's findings are out? Key Democrats and some members of the media are under a microscope.
I'm not surprised at all.
As they're
Look how much
accused
money
of
he
pushing
raised during
a
his
baseless
2022
narrative for
re-election bid
years,
for
as
Florida
we
governor.
now
North of $200 million. North of $200 million. Look how much Trump raised in the section for a month and a half of his campaign, ending at the end of 2022. Only about $10 million, in fact, a little bit less than that. And, you know, money isn't everything in politics, in a presidential bid, but you can't have a successful campaign without having money on it.
Special Counsel Durham, that there needs to be wholesale changes at the FBI?
Again, that is with the Department of Justice. That's not something that I'm going to speak from the podium. As you just stated in your question, we believe in an independent Department of Justice. That's what the president said when he was running, and that's what the president has said the last 2 years. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys in Japan.
So not exactly shooting down the report. Now here's a quote from the Durham report about an aide to Adam Schiff. One of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence staffers, that's D.C. speak for the Intel Committee, said their boss, Congressman Adam Schiff, would soon take over leadership of the committee. The researcher took the comment as a mild threat. Now, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy questioned Schiff's suitability for public office.
And Senator Grassley and Congressman Comer, they say they've got the FBI document on this, and that's what the document spells out. So in future, what we want to do, we want to see that report.
Well, that's
what it's all about.
Going to subpoena the document. They are aware of the document. They're going to subpoena the document so they can get it in their hands and then pursue things further. But they do seem to know a lot about it. That said, it begs the question. The FBI has reportedly had this document in their possession since June of 2020. What happened in November of 2020, Stu? This is yet another piece of information that the American people should have had when they went into the voting booth in November of 2020. But
gradually it's coming out, but we want it all out and soon.
We've had 2.5 years of the Biden administration that people didn't get a chance to vote on the guy that we knew who he was. The American people didn't see.
Here we go. Buckle up. We begin with this Fox News alert. Silence from the White House. As Special Counsel John Durham's report reveals just how forcefully the left pushed the Trump-Russia narrative.
And now that Mr. Durham, the special counsel's findings are out, key Democrats and some members of the media are under a microscope. as they're accused of pushing a baseless narrative for years, as we now know.
Lucas Tomlinson joins us live from Washington. Lucas?
Good morning, Steve Ainsley and Brian. The White House press secretary refusing to directly answer the following questions yesterday.
What is the White House reaction to Special Counsel Durham's report on how the FBI handled the Trump-Russia probe?
I would leave it to the Department of Justice to speak to.
Does he agree with Special Counsel Durham that there needs to be wholesale changes at the FBI?
Again, that is with the Department of Justice. That's not something that I'm going to speak from the podium. As you just stated in your question, we believe in an independent Department of Justice. That's what the president said when he was running, and that's what the president has said the last 2 years. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys in Japan.
So not exactly shooting down the report. Now here's a quote from Durham report about an aide to Adam Schiff, one of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence staffers, that's DC speak for the Intel Committee, said their boss, Congressman Adam Schiff, would soon take over leadership of the committee. The researcher took the comment as a mild threat. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy questioned Schiff's suitability for public office.
It really raises the question about Adam Schiff. You remember when he told the American people he had proof? Remember when he told them he didn't know the whistleblower? And what he put America through and openly lied to us? It raises a lot of questions about his character, his standing inside of Congress, or whether he should even be in Congress.
And here's former Attorney General Bill Barr on special report last night.
Source, and there are really two sources and drivers of this whole ugly episode, and that is Hillary Clinton's campaign, who launched a smear campaign that was based on getting Russian sources to spread false information about Donald Trump. And both the press and the FBI abandoned any semblance of professionalism and took up.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Tommy Nation Politics. Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. I'm here with Jamar Jabari for the Voice of Change podcast, and we're back again streaming on Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Talking about politics, being free-thinking, innovative, open-minded, and I guess just talking about the truth that the mainstream media wants to ignore. We're going to talk about some of those things. And I hope everybody's having a happy Pride. But first of all, like, how's it going, Jamar? I haven't seen you in a long time. Did you have a good Father's Day?
Yeah, I got cats. Happy Juneteenth, motherfucker. But yeah, happy Father's Day to all the fathers.
You got to show appreciation to the fathers. Hey, did you know how that, like, do you know the fathers?
The fathers.
Do you know how, like, where are the fathers at? If only, I don't know if black people can celebrate, hey,
don't
Father's
you push
Day,
that.
We don't have any fathers. Where are the fathers? I'm Bill O'Reilly. Where are the fathers?
My dad was
so
with me.
Yeah, mine too. But like, the first recorded observance of Father's Day was in July 5th, 1908.
Really?
And do you know what happened? Yeah, it was a special service to honor 360 men, most of them fathers, who died in a coal mine explosion.
Damn.
So basically, they were the first victims of capitalism.
And
here we are. Here we are. Yeah. So now, like that, that's why it's Father's Day. It represents like the people who toil and sweat, provide for their families, but still get betrayed by the political class.
Yeah.
Usurped from power. Stabbed in the back,
yep.
And poisoned by their fucking environmental racism.
Yep.
So I mean, it's funny because like we'll honor them though. The decorum, bro. Don't you love it? Don't you love that decorum? So we're talking about Juneteenth. Like I didn't realize it was Juneteenth because like I'm from Texas and we didn't know that the emancipation happened, guys. We were like, they left us in the fields. We're still here. They just fucking left. What's going on? Y'all are emancipated.
What?
Y'all know that? So that's another reason why we have to get. Jamar had to tell me I was emancipated.
Hey, somebody had to tell you, right? We're fully not emancipated. We're still slaves under this capitalist system.
You've probably spotted First United Methodist Church here in Uptown. It's actually near the starting point of the Pride Parade that the church actively participates in. But we've learned their ideas of LGBTQ acceptance isn't accepted by all United Methodist churches. This is a celebration of love for each and everybody. But instead of being united in this message, the United Methodist Church is now facing a divide.
From the very beginning, the church has held that the practice of homosexuality is incompatible with the scriptures. And this really has come to a head.
So much so that at the start of May, those in support of a more traditional approach to LGBTQ acceptance decided to split into a new global Methodist church based on more conservative ideas. But at First United Methodist Church in Uptown, they're trading conservative for overall acceptance.
And we feel that people who are LGBTQI are folks that God has created.
And for that reason, the senior pastor says they're sticking with UMC to continue the mission that's long been a part of their ministry.
Grace and inclusion and the marginalized, and we're actually committed to the roots of Methodism.
Meanwhile, other United Methodists are split on what this change can mean and how to move forward.
This church in particular has we've not made a decision one way or the other, but we're in some pretty regular conversation about what we should be doing, and certainly are praying for some guidance about that.
And the next general conference for the United Methodist Church is set to take place in 2024, where this denominational divide is expected to be addressed.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Tommy Nation Politics.
To explain why I support the Marriage Protection Amendment and why I'm urging Congress to pass it and send it to the states for ratification. Marriage is the most enduring and important human institution, honored and encouraged in all cultures and by every religious faith. Ages of experience have taught us that the commitment of a husband and a wife to love and to serve one another promotes the welfare of children and the stability of society. Marriage cannot be cut off from its cultural, religious, and natural roots without weakening this good influence on society. Government, by recognizing and protecting marriage, serves the interests of all. In our free society, people have the right to choose how they live their lives. And in a free society, decisions about such a fundamental social institution as marriage should be made by the people, not by the courts. The American people have spoken clearly on this issue, both through their representatives and at the ballot box. In 1996, Congress approved the Defense of Marriage Act by overwhelming bipartisan majorities in both the House and Senate, and President Clinton signed it into law. Unfortunately, activist judges and some local officials have made an aggressive attempt to redefine marriage in recent years. Since 2004, state courts in Washington, California, Maryland, and New York have overturned laws protecting marriage in those states. And in Nebraska, a federal judge overturned a state constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage. These court decisions could have an impact on our whole nation. The Defense of Marriage Act declares that no state is required to accept another state's definition of marriage. If that act is overturned by activist courts, then marriages recognized in one city or state might have to be recognized as marriages everywhere else. That would mean that every state would have to recognize marriages redefined by judges in Massachusetts or local officials in San Francisco, no matter what their own laws or state constitutions say.
Hey guys, happy Tommy Nation Politics Tuesday live stream. This is Tommy Nation Politics. Hopefully you're being free-thinking, innovative, open-minded. I have a guest with me. It's been a long time coming. Cousin from Memphis, Elise Saulsbery from Agape Affirming Ministries. She's gay and she's a pastor. We're going to have a really good conversation about the church and LGBT this Pride. And yeah, Elise, welcome to Tommy Nation Politics.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Finally, good to be here.
I know, for real. So I mean, you have like a wealth of information, but how are things? First of all, like how's everything going? Like Pride, Memphis, things have been historical things have been happening in Memphis. I've been watching.
Oh, absolutely.
So, how's everything?
Yeah, Memphis is we're navigating the shift, right? So in the midst of Christian nationalism, in the midst of escalating racism and racist behaviors, we're doing pretty well. I'll say with what we have to work with. I think everyone knows of the death of Tyree. So since that, there's been a little shift, right, among the advocates or what the advocates and folks on the ground from grassroots organization are pushing for. In terms of ministry, it's the South. We're in the Bible Belt, right? So not much shift there in terms of inclusivity, in terms of tolerance. But, these things were issues before we got here. There'll be issues after we leave. And so the only thing you can do is what you can do with the time that you have. And so I think that's what the climate looks like for those on the ground who are doing the work, including clergy who are affirming.
So affirming. That's a word that I heard in that's too loud. That's a word that I heard in a church a lot. Affirming, praying, meditating. I feel like something I realized, while I was watching all of these right wingers just go after, just like that's why I played the George W. Bush thing. Doesn't it remind you of exactly what happened when they tried to ban gay marriage? Like they just take one issue and then they want to go out of their way to just hate us because we're an abomination and stuff like that. It doesn't sound affirming. It doesn't sound Christ-like. It doesn't sound anything like that. And so,
well, I'll offer that affirming in the way that it is supposed to be used. So one of the terms that it really kind of gets on my nerves actually when I hear people in the church use it is progressive. Right. So everybody wants to be progressive. They're losing their normal members. So they want to say that they're or at least inclusive, which means they invite everybody in. Right. But inclusive is not affirming. And you can include somebody in something and not fully accept who they are. You can tolerate them being same gender loving and married. You can tolerate them being a member of your church, but still not allow them a seat in your pulpit or leadership positions. So a lot of churches are claiming to be progressive or inclusive, but it does not mean that they are affirming. So affirming means that as a pastor, I'll marry your baby. Oh, I'll marry you. I'm sorry. I'll bless your babies. I will baptize you knowing that you are living outward, that you're living out of the closet in terms of your orientation. If you're transgender, I don't have any hesitation about accepting all of who you are. Right. So that is the difference between inclusive and affirming. Inclusive says, I'll include you. Affirming says, I affirm you. I validate all of who you are. And so I think in terms of language, right, I think a lot of folks are being, I don't want to call it deceitful because some people don't know, right, the difference in inclusive and affirming. But a lot of people in terms of churches, they are losing membership. And they'll use inclusive to bring you in. And then once you get there, you realize that they don't really care for who you are. They just tolerate who you say you are and how you live your life.
So, but doesn't that go off of the whole, Leviticus chapter about this is an abomination, and that's why they can't accept that? I mean, how is that squared religiously or theologically?
Well, theologically,
with the Bible.
Well, it's some of what the Bible says, but they haven't fully read it right in detail. They haven't fully studied it because, right. So in Leviticus the book of Leviticus, where it talks about mankind and womankind and where folks like to lift up Sodom and Gomorrah, if you look at verse 4, you'll see where it says all the men of the city. And then towards the end of verse 4, it says all the people of the city. And that in itself excludes that verse or that story from referring to same gender loving people, right? It says all the men of the city. If you go back and look, I believe it's Leviticus 18 or 19, but verse 4, all the men of the city, all the people of the city. And again, when you hear people, you don't only consider men, because if it only meant men, it would have said only men. If it had meant women, it would only say women. But when it says all the people, that's men, women, boys, girls, that's all genders, right? Even gender nuns, even transgender people, right? It includes everybody when you say all the people. So again, a lot of folks have not fully studied the text. They're only regurgitating things that they've heard their previous pastors say, or what their denominational bylaws will include or exclude. So yeah, I think there's a more study that needs to be done by folks who are still using any Leviticus text to exclude same gender loving people or LGBT folks across the spectrum.
I think that's an interesting point. I think just what I think is that, Jesus Christ was supposed to fulfill the laws, and he didn't really exclude anybody. He included 5,000 people. He literally tried to walk on water to get to his disciples to fellowship with them. And, the Samaritan, there's all these stories in the Bible about inclusivity and affirming. And yet they still, there's still branches or denominations in this America that's supposed to be a Christian nation that they're not really, they're not displaying the characteristics of Christ in any way. Don't you find that kind of ironic while they're judging us, telling us we're abominations? They're literally hypocrisy.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I don't find it ironic, because Christ was never a Christian. Christians label themselves Christians, suggesting they are followers of Christ, but Christ was never for the type of church that would exclude anybody. That's Paul's doctrine. So many people they'll follow Paul's doctrine before they follow Jesus. That tells you off the top that they may be Christian, but they're not Christ Christians, right? They're not Christ followers. So that's how we deviate, folks. Anytime you hear or read of a person who's wanted to dissect or exclude any human being, they are not Christ, right? They are not of the followers of Christ. They are followers potentially of Paul, but not followers of Christ. And then the other thing is, when you hear people talk about excluding folks that move within the gospel of Paul, these same people have the same mentality as Paul. It's do as I say, not as I do, right? Because Paul was also in the mindset of where Paul said this, and this is what I think is the biggest part of the game in what Paul preached. He said, that I know to do, I don't do. That I know not to do, that's what I do. It's like my body has a mind of its own. And so if you think about it, most of the people who are making all this noise about LGBT people and how we choose to live our lives, they have skeletons in their closet, and not even skeletons. They have, a second life that they're living, right? That is behind closed doors, but they can only demonize those that they see living their lives out loud. And that's what they do, because they are ashamed of who they are. And they are embarrassed or ashamed that they can't live as free as some of us who choose to live free and outlive. So they demonize what they can't do out in the open, right? Think about it. Every senator, every person that or most of the people at this point that we've heard outwardly speak against gays, like in a anger, you can tell something's up with them when they're angry or anything like that. Give it a couple of years. We always hear something about their private lives that will bring reproach to the very people that they're attempting to impress by trying to demonize LGBT people. So yeah, they live their lives somewhat like a Paul. You know, their bodies has a mind of their own. That's the excuse they.
I think that's interesting. That's interesting reference. Don't forget though, Jesus did exclude some people. They were the money changers.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And yeah, so literally everything is backwards. Praising the money changers, and excluding the the people that are trying to give love and
absolutely. Now Jesus, he named them, he rebuked them, but it was in a way for them to correct, right? Getting over on people, right? It was in a way as to keep them from making the church look bad, the institution of the physical church look bad, which is where they were exchanging money, right? So it was in ways that would keep them from putting the burden of their greed on the people. So yes, to your point, absolutely correct. He also gave them space to correct their behavior.
I mean, but he would have one of the things is he would have to know that the establishment in and of itself is always corrupted and is always going to fight everything that he's. I mean, as it was in time. I mean, render Caesar under what is due to Caesar, but Caesar wants to take more and more, and my kingdom is not of this world,
absolutely.
Right? And so, it's interesting. I mean. So you said that Jesus is not a Christian, of course, because that would be narcissistic. But like, would you call yourself a Christian? Like, would you call yourself?
You know, I would say that some of my beliefs align. Some of them, right, align with people who call themselves Christians. And I have called myself Christian in the past, but because of the harm, right, that has been superimposed on people such as myself, even those. In other ways that Christianity has harmed them. You know, I was raised in the old sanctified church, is what we call it, the holiness Pentecostal church. And so when a girl would get pregnant, they would force her to come to the front of the church to quote unquote repent to the church. And you never saw the male that got her pregnant or the males that were involved with her sexually, even if that meant that male was the pastor. Even if it meant that male was a minister, we never saw those people come before the church and apologize. So it's not just the demonization that happened among LGBT folks or against LGBT folks that caused me to take a step back from labeling myself Christianity. It's the demonization of women and girls and all the things that come with it. So to answer your question, I really don't label myself Christian. This is not a Christian nation. It is supposed to be land of the free, home of the brave, where everybody, right? All people are supposed to be included and welcome, you know, and I think those who are counter the message of affirming others, their voices, there are not a lot of them. They're just hollering the loudest, right? So again,
oh, they're hollering the loudest.
Yeah, they're hollering loudest. They're climbing up the side of the White House. You know, they're doing all kind of craziness to make it look like they have more power than they have and more numbers than they have. But I do not believe it is.
Yeah, that's why they're doing it. But what it really reveals to me is just the fact that it's like I keep saying, it's like the exact opposite behavior of Christ.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just at the point now where I'm just like, I'm not really a Christian. I've been thinking about it more. I feel bad for blaming Jesus for these people. For the longest time, I was like, how are these people literally going to walk around with your name saying that they're from you? They don't drop down dead. They don't turn to pillars of salt. The earth doesn't swallow them up. What happened to all this? Yeah. But now I realize that it wasn't Jesus. It was these people. And some of us are actually called, like like the prophets. Like Moses was he wasn't perfect. Judas wasn't perfect, but they all have played their role, and some of us have to play our role to these Christians and check their behavior, because their behavior has gotten way beyond the pale since banning gay marriage. Like they literally follow a guy who takes a woman, a sex worker like Mary Magdalene, and they fucking give her hush money so they can shut her up. Then they cheat on their taxes, and then they get caught about it, and then Trump blames the hooker. She's a hooker. Don't believe her. Is that something Jesus would say?
No.
Would Jesus literally exploit lots of workers and not pay them under the table? Would Jesus stiff them and their bills and their families and not provide for their families? So, like, following Donald Trump, he was like the epitome of a selfish, narcissistic guy who doesn't care about the 5,000. He cares about Trump. That's it. He's the opposite of Jesus. At this moment, guys, like George W. Bush, he was a colloquial guy with the folks, and you could see him at a church. This Donald Trump is outwardly in your face, all about himself. Talks about his book, his lawsuits, his fucking houses. Oh, I've got the best ratings, right? He's definitely not Jesus. Jesus never talked about himself, unless he said, I'm the way, the truth, and the light. That was serious. But mostly he talked about other people, loving your neighbor as yourself. And then they take that, and it's like the ultimate irony, Elise. They pick a guy who's literally all about himself, doesn't care about anyone but himself, lies, and treats people that Jesus would treat in respectful ways, and calls them phonies, pigs.
Yeah.
But can they really can they really call themselves Christians anymore, Elise? And can they really follow a man, Donald Trump, who wants to grab women by the pussy? Can they really be this dualists like that?
I'll go back to biblical text, right? It wasn't the world, as we call it, the secular world, that crucified Christ. It was the church folks in the day. They were the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and that's who we see right now acting outwardly. Like the spirit of the Pharisee and the Sadducee that had Christ crucified, it's still alive today. So, again, I think to your question, align what Christ actually did, which is what you're doing, with the behavior of today. Christian nationalists today. It's two completely different things, but Christian nationalists do align with Pharisees and Sadducees of Jesus's day. These were the same people that are crawling up the side of the White House. Those are the same people who would vote to crucify Christ, right? But they'll call themselves Christians. How do you label yourself something when you'll murder or have that individual murder who is standing for good? You'll call them a socialist just because he said the poor you'll have with you always. So clothe them, feed them, house them, love your neighbors, right? And so these are the same folks who will say, let them pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. That's not the mind, nor the life, nor any intentions of God as it relates to folks who would label themselves Christians or anything of the like.
I think nor does it resemble any of the founding fathers, ideals of life, liberty, and happiness. Individual spirits, freedom, liberty, all these things that the founding fathers talked about. Like, this is another thing that's hilarious, is that they say that they believe in these things. They stand for the flag. They stand for the flag, right? What does the flag stand for? Freedom, liberty. We have a constitution that makes us all equal. And so at the same time, they pretend to promote equality, freedom. They have ramped up their hatred in an ironic way. For the last, I swear to God, 8 years, since Obama became president, like, it broke their brains to have a black president. I don't like Obama at all. I think he was a corrupt guy, Wall Street guy. But they liked him. They disliked him for all, of course, the wrong reasons, as they do. Kenyan Muslim socialist, all kinds of stupid racist things, and now I think they've just got, I don't know, with that Trayvon Martin. Now they go black people, gays, then to somebody else. I think we're back to us. And so, guys, this is from the mainstream media news doing a little article on this. But this is just a little bit of what's happening in Texas. By the way, I just want to let you know.
Pride Month, and there is a very scary anti-gay, anti-trans obsession on the right across the country right now. It's an obsession that certain violent fringes of the conservative movement are taking their cues from. On Saturday in California, a group of Proud Boys interrupted the San Lorenzo Public Library's Drag Queen Story Hour, an event for children and families, shouting homophobic and transphobic slurs. One wore a shirt that reads, "Kill your local pedophile," with a picture of an AK-47. On the same day, a group of 31 people affiliated with the white nationalist group Patriot Front were arrested near a Pride Parade event in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. They had masks, riot shields, and at least one smoke grenade. Police say they were planning to start a riot at that Pride event. Parker Malloy has been covering this rise of anti-gay, anti-trans attacks in her newsletter titled The Present Age, also former editor-at-large for Media Matters for America, and she joins me now. Parker, it's good to have you on. I know that you do a lot of monitoring of right-wing media and have for a while, and it just really is striking to me, and if you want to sort of tell us what you see of how intensely focus has come to been brought to bear, even in just the last month, on particularly drag queens, trans folks, gay folks.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Chris. And so just in the past month, there has.
I don't really care about what any of these mainstream media people say, but I just want to get the topic out there. Whatever they say after that is nonsense. But in real life, so they've really grabbed onto us. Did you have what they call as pedophiles? Groomers, that kind of language. What's the deal with that in the first place? Like, why are we pedophiles and groomers? Is it because their kids don't groom? I don't understand what the right wing's doing right there.
Well, I think it is a perversion on their end, right? It says how far they're willing to go to demonize a group of people who pedophilia is not our thing, it's theirs. If you track the court, right, on a lot of the people, even who have attempted to demonize LGBT folks from the Senate floor, from Congress or wherever, who end up getting caught up in pedophilia, those aren't LGBT people, those aren't drag queens, right? These are people who identify as straight, cis men, mostly white men, right, who are speaking this language, calling LGBT folks pedophiles. That's never been our thing. Pedophilia has never been a thing of LGBT folks. But
I think it's because we step too much in their world where, because remember before we were a secret, we were at Stonewall, we were hiding ourselves, and now we're out in the open. Their kids can see, and they can't explain it because they still believe in their principles. And so these are just smear tactics.
Right.
That are.
I mean, if you look at the policies that have been passed in Tennessee just in 2023 during the legislative session, there's an I call it the anti-pronoun bill, where teachers and instructors, educational instructors, they're protected if they don't identify even a transgender kid that says, hey, my pronouns are whatever that transgender kid's pronouns are. The teacher is protected by not calling them the pronoun that they choose to identify with, right? So that bill, there's the anti-drag bill, where drag queens cannot do public performances, and if a kid is anywhere in the vicinity and they're able to see it, then that person can go to jail. Well, it has never been a drag queen who was found to have anything to do with pedophilia.
It also doesn't sound constitutional. Like, does that sound like freedom to you guys?
No.
Again, like these things that they believe in free speech, freedom, and then they want to go and put people in jail for dressing in drag. Really?
But I'm going to say something, Tommy, that is, I would deem it controversial. 2 points, actually. The first one is, one of the things that we have to be careful of are Democrats who agree with the values of Republicans.
Well, as I feel as if they all agree with the values which they share together, and their values are get elected, stay elected, and campaign finance contributions. Everything we argue about is not relevant to them. They'll bring it up during election time, and then once election time is over, they'll get back to their staying in power, being in power, campaign finance contributions. So try to get everybody to realize that they're cretins and traitors to our country.
You know, I would add that I think religion has a lot to do with their values aligning, right? And so for any of those things that you mentioned to happen in order to be fully financed, right? Their campaigns, in order to have the support, they've got to play on the other side. What is the method that they use to play on the other side? to agree in areas where they get to throw the rock and hide their hands, right? In supermajority states like Tennessee, Democrats really, if they wanted to, they could publicly vote with in alignment with the Republicans and still be able to hide their hands and say, well, hey, we're in a supermajority state. We really don't have any other choice except to vote with. Like, they get to do that. And some Democrats, even from the county that I live in, have done that, right? They just don't realize how close many of us are watching how they vote.
So that's another question that I wanted to ask you, and I've been trying to ask religious people, is that I feel like this following, this blind following of Democrats and Republicans is a religious-esque thing. Because you know how we have a God, and we don't blame God for anything because God is perfect, right? So we can't blame God for all of the situations like kids with leukemia or famine or people dying. So we pray for our leaders because they're in charge, right? But all they do is backstab us in the back, get us into wars, kill us, poison us, pollute our oceans. They do all these things, but at the back of our minds, we're thinking they're our leaders, appointed by God, right? So they can't be doing anything wrong, right? It's me. I'm the one that fucked up. I'm the sinner. This is really something I've been thinking about a lot, is that I feel like that's the mentality that's gotten us into the trouble that we're in.
Well, think about it, though.
We're trusting false gods.
I don't think we believe like that anymore about our leaders, not even the church leaders.
Oh, good. Thank God.
We see too many demonizing policies being passed. We don't hear enough of our religious leaders speaking out loud on these issues. And so look at the population of the church. The average age of today's church is about 50. Which means that the church itself has lost everybody from Generation X on down to the youngest person that's breathing right now. So what does that say about how the from Generation X on up looks at religious leaders and the leadership of this country? We do not trust them. We don't know which side they're really on. You could be a Republican that acts as a Democrat. You could be a Democrat that acts as a Republican. And all the other folks are just, who are you and where did you come from? Right? That's how young people, or I'll say age 50 and down, that's how we're looking at the politics of today. We do not trust the leadership. We do not trust it. And I'm telling you, we do not trust the leadership of this country. Right, because we've seen one thing, we've heard another, So yeah, I think what you name as far as people believing that Jesus sent these folks or God sent these folks to be our leaders, maybe that was of the baby boomer generation, but everybody after the baby boomer generation, we believe what we see you do and we believe what we hear you say.
It's good to hear you say that. Yeah, but the right wingers definitely believe in that shit because Trump is my exhibit A. Trump.
Right.
So you can say that. I'm glad you see. I'm glad you're aware. But these guys are still authoritarian, hierarchist, bootlicking, God-appointed, fucking superstitious motherfuckers. I don't know how we're gonna literally be in a country with these guys.
Well,
we're literally in the Stone Ages.
I know there are a lot of people who don't believe that voting helps or works, but it is the only thing that we have left to really get these folks who are seated out of office. It's the only thing we have left.
There was just one more thing. Sam Adams used to have this bucket of tar with some feathers.
Uh-huh.
You remember that? In the old days where we did that? Those were good times. Can we bring that back? No? Are we more civilized now? I don't know if we could have had a revolution today.
I was going to say the revolution is let me say it like this. We can have a revolution, but it's going to have to be by young white people or white people, because we see what happens when Black people and people of color attempt to get involved or to start any revolutions or change, right?
Yeah, they kill it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm going to tell you something I experienced personally here in Memphis. I was asked to show up for an LGBT march in Midtown, which is a really busy part of the city, on a street called Poplar. Well, we did. Wow. We were walking through the park, Overton Park, which is one of the major parks known as the LGBT park, whatever. We congregated there. We have for years. On Sunday, everybody leave church. You come to the park and you fellowship with other gay people. So this was a couple of years ago. I get to the park. We're marching through the park. We get to the edge of the street, and the white people in the group go, "Hey, white people, use yourself as protection for the black people." Let me tell you something. That to this day brings me to tears, and I'll tell you why. It is because even though many of us believe that we were a part of this land of the free and home of the brave, that people still knew that to be white was to be right. Like that was their belief, and they had never said it. Like white people are protected more than anybody else in this country, and they've never verbalized it until there's an issue around a cop killing a black person, right? Any other situation, even when as it relates to abortion, you know, black people in our experiences are always centered, but now that Roe has been overturned, you rarely hear about how it's impacting marginalized and communities of color. Right? What you see is a lot of rants going on, but it's not including us. So again, somebody in the group hollered, "Hey, white people, go into the street, use your body as a protection for the black people." And traffic literally stopped for the white people. It stopped for the white people. And the black folks were able to stand in the middle of the street with mics and all this other stuff. But I know, as good as I sit here, that if those white folks weren't present, those folks driving down Poplar very well would have sped through traffic. They would have used us as bowling pins, right? Because we still live in a very much so racist, anti-Christ nation.
Well, I mean, white people have had their part to play, and their part to play has been lately is because earlier in our history, they weren't doing shit. We were the ones who built the White House and all of their shit. We were the ones who picked their cotton and took care of their kids. Mm-hmm. So they didn't do anything. But lately, they've realized that this, whatever it is, I don't know what it's called, white privilege. You say that term doesn't even give that shit justice. Let me just tell you.
Right.
I don't even know what it's called, but I don't know. That's just not enough.
You know what I call?
What?
I call it the spirit of Elijah.
Okay.
I think in First Kings,
Nick Cannon said something like that. What was it? What's this?
Well, I'm not sure if I haven't heard him, but so I call it the spirit of Elijah. The spirit of Elijah in 1 Kings 18, you had Elijah, who was a prophet, right? And we've always praised how he made God live for the prophets of Baal when they built the altar, and he was like, well, whoever God shows up, whichever one of our gods answers first, then that's who we should call God, basically was the point. Well, he's doing all this stuff, and when he calls on God, his God answers and sets the altar on fire. Well, then he turns around and kills 450 prophets of Baal. And you want to know what the point of that entire chapter was? What? Is what's happening in America right now. They're demonizing and killing people because of the difference of beliefs. That is not God. God never instructed Elijah to do that. So when you see people on January 6th who are climbing up the side of the White House, God didn't tell them to do that. God doesn't need their help proving that God is God. You see what I'm saying?
No, Trump told them to do that. They're God.
Absolutely.
Their God told them to do it.
They plan to do it. But again, you will see these people, you'll hear them calling themselves Christians, but I call it the spirit of Elijah because one of the things that God did right after Elijah did that was tell Elijah, he gave Elijah very specific instructions in the Bible. He said, go here and anoint this person king, go there and anoint that person king. And then he told him, go and anoint this person because this person is going to be your replacement.
Yeah, he did the same thing to Moses.
Exactly. Because they had been doing too much, right? They had the instructions. All God told Elijah is go there. I'm going to make it rain, right? Elijah went there and created a whole situation that only centered himself. And that's when God had to pull back and go, yeah, you're not really doing what I asked you to do. You're doing more than what I asked you to do because I didn't need you to. If the 450 prophets of Baal could have ever turned their belief over, we'll never know. Because Elijah murdered him. Because he wants to, right? Because of their difference in belief. That is why we're seeing the policies that we're seeing come across the states right now. God didn't ask any of these folks who label themselves Christian to do what they're doing. They're doing it because, in their opinion, with who they disagree with and how those folks live their lives, God ain't moving fast enough to soothe their own satisfaction, right? So they're doing it themselves.
Their argument, though, is that we caused this backlash because we could have gotten our gay marriage, right? Mm-hmm. But then we had to go and this is an issue that's very interesting. It's very controversial on the right and the left. This explosion of trans identity, which everybody said something about it, from Joe Rogan to Anderson Cooper. Everybody's getting into trouble because there's different genders, and there's a they them. Elise, back when I was growing up, I didn't know about that. Okay, so it's new to me too. And so with that comes trans women in sports, which they have videotapes of all of these men beating down on women. They call it misogyny, and I find it hilarious that they pretend to care about women now. But at the same time, I even as a gay man, even as a black man, I just want to full disclosure to reach out to you. Like, I don't know how to think about all of this evolution. It's not because I'm trying to not be inclusive or I'm afraid of them, not like right wingers, but I don't understand the semantics of having a male body. See, I like guys. I'm gay. I'm a guy. I know I'm a guy. I like being a guy. I just like other guys. Sure. But I don't have that mentality of not being anybody else. And I understand that, back when I was in the closet, I hated myself and I want everybody to be who they are. But at the same time, going around smacking a volleyball in a 5'4" woman's face, that's an issue. Is that an issue?
It's an issue for who?
It's an issue that people are pushing, and it might be disingenuous, but at the same time, women are losing titles. People are getting hurt because of these, massive. They have got mass and bone density, and they're losing records, and women are losing records in women's sports. Do you think that's a big issue?
The reason why I don't think it is because I played football before. I played football, and even in our practice sessions, we had to play against guys. None of us ever ended up with broken bones and all of that kind of stuff, right? So I would like to see the scientific data that backs people who say that transgender people should not be able to perform in the sports of the gender that they prefer or the gender that they identify as. I haven't seen anything that supports that. I've heard of incidents, right? I've heard of a few incidents, but incidents happen in regular, quote unquote, regular sports. NBA, people get injured all the time in the NBA, but nobody's complaining about cisgender men playing against cisgender men.
But this goes back to what you were talking about, doing more than. So like we ended up putting that issue on the table to where the right wing is using that issue to revisit their old grievance, which is us being an abomination. They hate us, and they've stayed silently for years while they finally had this opportunity to watch a trans woman, a trans woman bashing a regular woman. Now they have an issue to talk about how we're changing social structures. We're destroying women's sports, which is an institution. We're being. Do you think we overstepped there? What do you think about that?
I'm a woman who had played sports up until I was 30. From the time that I was in elementary school, I don't have an issue with it, and I haven't heard any other women actually. I'll tell you something that I talked to Senator Pody here in Tennessee during a visit to the Capitol, the state Capitol. And I asked him, I said, why are you, I said, if you'll tell me how did coming up with this anti-transgender bathroom bill, why is it a thing? You want to know what? He looked at me straight in the face without flinching and said that his granddaughter went to use the restroom and there was a man that came in there and that's why he's crafting that policy at the time. That's why he was sponsoring that bill. I said, so did something happen? Was she injured? Did that person attempt to do anything to her? Was it a cisgender man? Was it a transgender man? Like, who was it? He said, well, I don't know. I said, but based on the story you just gave me, it sounds like a cisgender male ended up potentially going into the women's restroom. There was no issue. Your granddaughter wasn't harmed. I don't see the problem. This sounds like a bill that should be passed to keep cisgender men out of the women's restroom.
So you're saying this is a red herring?
Let me tell you what he did. He said, hey guys, gotta go. Got another meeting. And he peeled out of the room because the bill in the story that he gave to support it made absolutely no sense, right? Just like a lot of the things that they're coming up with. And here's one of the things that they won't say either. And this is why I asked for scientific evidence that supports their claim. Because the Bible tells us not to neglect. Matter of fact, Paul says, don't neglect science, right? It says that specifically, not to neglect science when it comes to issues that are brought to the table. If there is scientific data because Paul was very intelligent, be clear, and educated, but he said that. But you will never hear most of the people that are posturing that argument, you will never hear them mention science. You'll never hear them mention anything except current situations that are happening, one or two situations that they can posture to support what they believe. Religious.
In science, are there two genders, or are there more the two genders?
In science,
because I don't know.
There's always been more. Right?
When did we learn this before? Because I don't remember this, honestly.
Let me see. What was it? I read on this stuff all the time. I'll have to give you context. I'll send you a link to it, but there's always been several genders, right? Even if we construct the argument around religion, if we say that we're all formed in the image of God, God is genderless, even though folks across the religious spectrum identify God as he. If God is spirit, right? And they that worship God must worship in spirit and in truth. That means that God has no gender, right? And if we want to push it a step further, we can also say that we have no gender, right? If we're going to operate off of the premise of that, we are literally spiritual beings having earthly experiences. Right. So
but come on, we don't have a gender. I know exactly what gender I am, and by the way, I would I mean,
for the
what is a woman? What is a woman? What is a woman, Elise?
A woman is a person who identifies as woman.
Okay, so that's all that Justice had to say.
We can't use reproduction, right? To identify women, because there are people who were born under the guise or label of woman who don't have the ability to birth. So what is woman? Are we going to say that women are people who have vaginas? Is that fair? Well, what about intersex people that have both? You know what I mean? So I think, again, social constructs. And again, I think that people who are transgender are closest to God. And the reason
why is that?
The reason why I say that is because they may have been identified as one gender at birth, but then they're able to move into who they really are, right? Who they identify as. God is genderless, right? So that would mean that, again, none of us are male nor female, right? That would mean that the person who is transgender is able to operate in all of their energies, right? Or the energy that where they were birthed at as one gender, but then as far as social construct, and then they move in the guise or the spectrum of all of the other things, including gender nonconforming people, right? So all of the identities that we have labeled must be equally honored. So that's
a really good argument.
Really believe what we say about God. Like, people don't really believe what they say about God. That's what I believe.
And I think I discovered why the right wing is super upset about this, because ever since the beginning of time, they've been labeling us niggers or kikes or whatever. And now, like, literally, we're taking the labels off.
Absolutely.
and like they're so pissed.
They don't like it. They don't like that.
How come we can't control you and tell you what you are anymore?
Right. They don't.
That must be the real
love
issue,
your
isn't it?
neighbor. Like these people are angry at God. You know what I mean? Like, what do you do with folks who are angry at God? God.
I think they're angry at us for not taking it anymore.
Right.
But
if God said love your neighbor and they're like, no, I'm not going to do that, then what can I tell them if they won't even do what God asked them to do? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. What did you say about go get your replacement? That's something you can tell them. That's what you tell them. Y'all go get y'all have the spirit of Elijah. Now go get your replacement.
It's the spirit of Elijah. That's
I like
exactly what I call it.
I like that.
Yeah.
You made me feel a lot better about what's going on because honestly, in Texas, like I mean, I don't like to talk about myself too much, but it's been a scary time here ever since the last month. I've had I was at a gay bar downtown, and some people followed me home, and they figured out where I lived.
Wow.
They literally figured out where I lived, and they egged my house for like 3 days straight.
Wow.
It's the first time I ever thought about calling the police at all because I hate police. So like literally, and so I see it all around. There's Texas. They're driving around drag shows, harassing people, and violence is happening.
Yeah.
So I don't want to pretend like these guys are just protesting, holding up signs.
Right.
No, they're fucking following us and stalking us.
But here's
because they think we're groomers.
Happening.
And they think these things.
But
it's scary. It's really scary.
I think what we're witnessing is a manifestation of what's been happening behind closed doors already. There was a masculine of center woman who was murdered in Atlanta. Some guys broke into a house that she lived in with her roommates. They robbed them, but they raped her, only her, right? In a way to demean and to devalue who she was, right? And so they raped her and then they murdered her. She was the only one in the house that they killed. So this was a couple of years ago in Atlanta, right? Before Trump time. And so all of these things have been happening. It's just that people they've lost their minds, right? Around the power that they want and white power that they want to maintain, right? And at the end of the day, we have to protect ourselves by any means necessary is what I believe.
I agree with you. Those were some good ass words.
It's scary times.
Well, at least it was good to talk to you today, and I'm glad that you're doing okay. And if that's Sarah Lynn Williams, if you come across that chief, ask her what the hell's going on with that Scorpion unit. How the fuck did it end up with Tyree Nichols? I still want to answer that question. I know everybody forgot about it, but she told me on the national TV that she doesn't even know how the Scorpion unit, because they're a gang unit. So how did that even happen? I hope she still gets to the bottom of it. She did some great work firing their asses immediately, showing accountability. It took a black woman to literally show accountability in a place of power.
Yeah.
And so she did a great thing. They had some black conservatives on Fox News talking about this is what happens when a single mother runs the police station. Now she did a great job.
Yeah,
so they can eat shit. But I do need to, as much as I love that, I do need to follow up with how the fuck did that Scorpion unit get to him? And wasn't there another unit she had in Atlanta? Wasn't she the police chief in Atlanta?
Yeah. I read that she was police chief in Atlanta. And was hired in Memphis. Like I said, I'm not certain of all of the details. I really haven't dug that deep into the story. My sympathy.
It's an interesting story, isn't it?
My heart has really been in the direction of that mother. You know what I mean? Like how many more black mothers are going to have to suffer, loss of their daughters, right? And their sons and others, right? Transgender women, black transgender women who have been killed in our city, or at least one that we know of by police. So my heart is with the folks that are experiencing brutality at the hands of police, as well as those mothers, right? Being a black mother in this country right now is one of the scariest things to me, and all the other intersections that apply to my life. But that is one that is really, it's really scary, really scary.
Well, don't be too intimidated because you guys, y'all form the culture and you form the, the basis of real integrity and real morality that we always have. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. So no justice, no peace, though. And cops, man. We'll talk about that at a later time. Thanks for talking to me about religion and LGBT. Feel free to come on anytime you want. Elise, don't be a stranger. I know you're working. I'll try to come on one of your streams and figure out what you're talking about. I'm like, every time I try, I'm like, oh, she's talking about something. I don't know. Affirming.
Yeah, look,
Damn, now I know about that.
It's going to always be inclusive. It's going to always be affirming. It's going to always be from the perspective of love and acceptance. Yeah, so join us anytime. We have a good time in the Tuesday night Bible study, or Tuesday night talkback studies is what I call them. Because people get to express themselves there. They get to ask questions. They get to figure it out, right? They get to not be demonized or not feel like that that they're a problem by asking a question. If I don't know, hey, I don't know. That's the answer. But those things that we can search out together, let's search them out and study them and see what the truth actually is. And if we can't find a solid answer, then we say we don't know. And some of the things we won't know until, for those who believe, right, that until we see God face to face, some things we will not know, until we see God face to face. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk to you. Glad that I was off today to be able to do it.
Yeah,
we've been trying to do this dance for a minute, and I'll offer too. Probably since we met some years ago, I've evolved a lot in my theology, right? I've evolved a lot by studying those things for myself, by going to reliable sources and resources that have, even people who will say, consider this, right? Or consider that. Or even just, listening to what I believe is the voice of God in my life that says, well, have you considered this? Or yes, I have changed my mind. Read this, right? That's right there in the Bible. And it's God speaking to me saying, yeah, I've changed my mind before, right? So again, just evolving in my own theology, and my theological foundation was one that was really harmful to me and my existence. But I want to be, I've grown to accept myself as an auntie, right? I'll be 45 this year. So I think I've officially arrived at auntie. So in this space that I live in, right, at my age, I'm embracing young people and other LGBT folks in the way that I needed to be embraced, right? But I didn't have anyone there that could support me in the way that I needed. So I've accepted that I'm an auntie now in my 40s. And so, yeah, evolving just to express the love of God for real, right, to people. So yeah.
Something we really needed when I was growing up, in the 90s. So I'm glad you're here now.
Yeah.
It's definitely a voice that needed to happen.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. And y'all, the best way to do what Elise is doing is to be free-thinking, innovative, open-minded. Join us at Tommy Nation Politics every single Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And feel free to send messages, facebook.com/Tommy Nation Politics. Go to the website, www.TommyNationPolitics.com. And we'll be back next Tuesday. That was Elise from Agape Affirming Ministries. And that was a good sermon. I feel better about